How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, December 20th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances that took place yesterday on Sunday, December 19th. And just taking a quick look at where we are in the calendar year. When it comes to football, we are in the midst of college football bowl season for the next couple weeks. In the NFL, we still have about 3-4 weeks of football left as we still have to see what's going on with the final matchup for the 15th week of football tonight. And then taking a look at what's going on with basketball, the college basketball and the professional basketball seasons are underway. They're about a month in, as college basketball won't end till April, pro basketball won't end till next summer. And then, of course, because we are entering the we are entering the end of the calendar year, we are reaching the midway point in the soccer calendar year as well, as there's still a lot of soccer as well. With that said, I'm getting into what's going on at the collegiate level, starting with college football. The only bowl game that took place yesterday was the Myrtle Beach Bowl presented by Tax Act, featuring the Old Dominion Monarchs and the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. Tulsa would end up beating Old Dominion 30-17. They outscored Old Dominion 17-10 in the first half and then 13-7 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Old Dominion Monarchs were led by their starting quarterback, Hayden Wolf. Wolf threw for 176 yards and an interception. Old Dominion's leading rusher was Blake Watson. He had 14 carries for 77 yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had 2 receptions for 14 yards. That's 91 total yards of offense. Old Dominion's leading tackler was Jason Henderson, as well as Arterian Johnson. They both had 13 tackles. Terry Jones had 12. Jordan Young had 10 tackles for himself, as he had the team's lone sack. On the winning end of this matchup, Tulsa was led by Davis Brin. Brin threw for 285 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 18 yards, so that is 303 total yards of offense. Tulsa's leading rusher was Shamari Brooks. He had 26 carries for 107 yards and a touchdown. He also had 10 receiving yards, so he had 117 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver, Josh Johnson, had 8 receptions for 129 yards and a touchdown. Their second leading receiver, Juan Carlos Santana, finished with 6 receptions for 75 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Johannes Burnett would finish with the most tackles on the team, as he had 6 of them. LJ Wallace would finish with the team's lone interception, as he also had a tackle. With this win, the Tulsa Golden Hurricane out of the American Athletic Conference will finish their 2021 season with a 7-6 record. With this loss, the unranked Old Dominion Monarchs from the Conference USA will finish their 2021 season with a 6-7 record. Taking a look now at what's going on with college basketball, starting off with the 11th ranked team in the nation, the Iowa State Cyclones hosted the unranked Southeast Louisiana Lions. Iowa State would end up beating Southeast Louisiana 77-54. The Cyclones would outscore the Lions by 8 in the first half and by 15 in the second. On the winning end, the undefeated Iowa State Cyclones were led in scoring by their guard off the bench, Caleb Grill, out of Wichita, Kansas. Caleb Grill would finish with 20 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals, all in 31 minutes. He shot 7 for 11 from the field and 6 for 10 from 3. With this win, the 11th ranked Iowa State Cyclones are now 11-0. They still have yet to lose a game this season. With this loss, unranked Southeast Louisiana is 4-8 on the year. Looking at the 17th ranked team in the nation, the Texas Longhorns went to Stanford to face off against the Cardinal in this coast-to-coast challenge. It wasn't at Stanford, but this was a coast-to-coast challenge. Texas would end up beating Stanford 60-53 after outscoring Stanford by 7 in the first half. Both teams were even in the second. On the winning end of this matchup, the 17th ranked Texas Longhorns were led in scoring by their starting guard, Andrew Jones. Their senior out of Irving, Texas, would finish with 13 points and 2 steals in 28 minutes. He shot 4 for 13 from the field on the day. With this win, the 17th ranked Texas Longhorns are 8-2. With this loss, the unranked Stanford Cardinal are 6-4. Taking a look at what went down in the NFL yesterday. Yesterday was the 15th Sunday of this 18-week season. Starting off in Buffalo, the Bills hosted the Carolina Panthers. The Bills would beat the Panthers 31-14 after outscoring the Panthers 17-8 in the first half and 14-6 in the second. On the losing end of this matchup, the Panthers were led by their starting quarterback, former NFL MVP Cam Newton. Newton would throw for 156 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He was also the Panthers' leading rusher as he ran for 71 yards. He would finish with 227 total yards of offense, as he also had a rushing touchdown, so he had 2 touchdowns on the day. Carolina's leading tackler on the defensive end was Jeremy Chin, as well as Jermaine Carter Jr. They both finished with 7 tackles. Yader Gross-Matos finished with 5 tackles as he finished with 2.5 sacks on the day. And Jeremy Chin would also finish with an interception alongside his team-high 7 tackles. On the winning end of this matchup, the Buffalo Bills were led by their elite starting quarterback, Josh Allen. Allen would complete 19 of his 34 passes as he threw for 210 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. He also ran for 24 yards, so he had 234 total yards of offense. Buffalo's leading rusher was Devin Singletary. He had 22 carries for 86 yards and the team's lone rushing touchdown. He also had a 10-yard reception, so he had 96 total yards of offense. Buffalo's leading receiver was Gabriel Davis. He had 5 receptions for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their elite wide receiver, Stephon Diggs, finished with 4 receptions for 35 yards and a receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Dane Jackson and their elite linebacker Tremaine Edmonds would finish with the team-high 7 tackles. Efe Obada finished with 3 tackles as he finished with 2 sacks. And A.J. Klein would finish with the team's lone interception as he had a tackle for himself. With this win, the Buffalo Bills are 8-6. With this loss, the Carolina Panthers are now 5-9. Taking a look at what went down in Detroit, the Lions hosted the Arizona Cardinals and were able to walk away with their second win of the season after they beat the Arizona Cardinals 30-12. They outscored the Cardinals 17-0, shut them out 17-0 in the first half before they outscored the Cardinals 13-12 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Cardinals were led by their elite starting quarterback, Kyler Murray. He completed 23 of his 41 passes as he threw for 257 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also ran for 3 yards. That's 260 yards of offense. Arizona's leading receiver, Christian Kirk, would finish with 9 receptions for 94 yards as he had a receiving touchdown for himself. On the defensive side of the ball, Arizona's leading tackler was Jalen Thompson. He had 10 tackles. And on the winning end of this matchup, the Detroit Lions were led by their starting quarterback, the former number 1 overall pick out of Cal, Jared Goff. Goff threw for 216 yards and 3 touchdowns. Detroit's leading rusher, Craig Reynolds, had 26 carries for 112 yards. He would also have 5 receiving yards, so he had 117 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, had 90 yards off 8 receptions through the air and a touchdown. He also had a 5-yard rush, so he had 95 total yards of offense. Detroit's second leading receiver, Josh Reynolds, had 6 receptions for 68 yards as he had a receiving touchdown as well. Detroit's leading tackler, Charles Harris, had 12 tackles as he had a sack and a half. Amani Oruwariye finished with an interception as he would go on, as that would be his only stat for the day. He also had 5 tackles. With this win, the Detroit Lions are now 2-11-1. With this loss, the Arizona Cardinals are now 10-4 as their loss to the Lions was their very first road loss of the 2021 season. Taking a look at what went down in Miami, the Dolphins hosted the New York Jets. The Dolphins would end up beating the Jets 31-24. The Jets outscored the Dolphins 17-10 in the first half before the Dolphins outscored the Jets 21-7 in the second. On the losing end of this matchup, the Jets were led by their starting quarterback, the number 2 overall pick from this most recent draft, Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson threw for 170 yards. He ran for 12 and his lone touchdown came on the ground. He had 182 total yards of offense and a rushing touchdown. The Jets' leading tackler on the defensive defensive end was C.J. Mosley out of Alabama. He finished with 14 of them. Quincy Williams would finish with 11. Brandon Echols would finish with a 20-yard pick six to go alongside, to have a great day for himself as he had 4 tackles. And then also Ashton Davis would have the team's other interception as he had 8 tackles. On the winning end of this matchup, the Miami Dolphins were led by their elite starting quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Tagovailoa would complete 16 of his 27 passes as he threw for 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He also ran the ball for 19 yards as he had 215 total yards of offense. The Dolphins' leading rusher was Duke Johnson. He had 22 carries for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. He also had a 20-yard reception, so he would go on to finish with 137 yards of offense. The Dolphins' leading receiver was Devontae Parker. He had 4 receptions for 68 yards as he had a receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Jerome Baker and Christian Wilkins would lead the team in tackles as they each had 7. Jerome Baker had 2 sacks as well. The team would finish with 6 of them. And with this win, the Miami Dolphins are now 7-7. With this loss, the New York Jets are now 3-11. Taking a look at what went down in New York, the Giants hosted the Dallas Cowboys from within their division. The Cowboys would beat the Giants 21-6 after they outscored the Giants 15-3 in the first half. They outscored the Giants 6-3 in the second half. On the losing end, the Giants were led by their starting quarterback, Mike Glennon. He threw for 99 yards and 3 interceptions. The Giants' leading rusher was Devin Booker. He had 74 yards on the ground and 8 yards through the air as he had 82 total yards of offense. Their elite running back, Saquon Barkley, had 50 yards on the ground and 24 yards through the air. He had 74 total yards of offense. Their leading tackler on the defensive end was Tay Crowder. He had 12 tackles. Logan Ryan and Julian Love had 10 tackles each. Lorenzo Carter would finish with 4 tackles as he had 2 of the team's 3 sacks. On the winning end of this matchup, the Dallas Cowboys were led by their starting quarterback, Dak Prescott. Prescott threw for 217 yards and a touchdown. Their leading rusher, Tony Pollard, finished with 74 yards on the ground and 13 yards through the air. That's 87 total yards of offense. Their elite running back, Ezekiel Elliott, had 16 carries for 52 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He had 20 receiving yards, so he had 72 total yards of offense with his rushing touchdown. The Cowboys' leading receiver, Dalton Schultz, had 8 receptions for 67 yards and the team's lone receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, DeMonte KZ would be the team's leading tackler as he had 7 of them. Jordan Lewis, Malik Hooker, and Trayvon Diggs would each add an interception as Trayvon Diggs he still continues to lead the NFL in interceptions. With this win, the Dallas Cowboys are 10-4. With this loss, the New York Giants are now 4-10. Taking a look now at what is going down in Pittsburgh, the Steelers hosted the Tennessee Titans. The Steelers would end up beating the Titans 19-13. The Titans outscored the Steelers 13-3 in the first half. The Steelers would shut the Titans out in the second half to come from behind to win it. They shut them out 16-0. The Steelers would tie the Titans with a field goal with 13 minutes left in the third, and they would take the lead with another field goal, as their fourth quarter was just 3 field goals to take them from behind to 6 points ahead. On the losing end of this matchup, the Tennessee Titans were led by their starting quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill threw for 153 yards, and he ran for 18 yards and an additional touchdown. That's 171 total yards of offense. Tennessee's leading rusher was Deontay Foreman out of Texas. He had 22 carries for 108 yards on the ground. He had 27 yards through the air, so that's 137 total yards of offense for him. On the defensive side of the ball, Zach Cunningham finished with 6 tackles on the day, leading the team. On the winning end, the Pittsburgh Steelers were led by their elite starting quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger completed 16 of his 25 passes as he threw for 148 yards. His only touchdown came on the ground, so he would have that as well for him. The Steelers' leading tackler on the defensive side was their elite safety, Minkah Fitzpatrick. He would finish with 14 tackles as he also recovered a fumble. Terrell Edmonds finished with 10 tackles for himself. Their elite defensive end, TJ Watt, had 5 tackles, a sack and a half, and a fumble recovery. Joe Schobert would go on to finish with 7 tackles for himself, as he would go on to finish with the team's lone interception. With this win, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 7-6-1. With this loss, the Tennessee Titans are now 9-5. Taking a look now at what went down in Jacksonville, the Jaguars hosted the Houston Texans, and the Texans would beat their division rivals 30-16. The Texans outscored the Jaguars 20-10 in the first half, and then they outscored the Jags 10-6 in the second. On the losing end of this matchup, the Jacksonville Jaguars were led by their elite starting quarterback, the number 1 overall pick from this summer's draft, Trevor Lawrence. He would complete 22 of his 38 passes as he threw for 210 yards. He also ran for 21, so he had 231 total yards of offense. The Jaguars' elite running back James Robinson had 18 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He also had 13 yards through the air. He had 88 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, Andrew Wingard would finish with 9 tackles, leading the team, and Tyson Campbell would finish with an interception alongside his 4 tackles. On the winning end of this matchup, the Texans were led by their starting quarterback, Davis Mills. Mills threw for 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He also ran for 2 yards. That's 211 total yards of offense for Davis Mills. Their leading receiver was Brandon Cooks. He had 7 receptions for 102 yards and both of the team's receiving touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Tavier Thomas and Garrett Wallow tied for the team high with 11 tackles, as Wallow had a sack for himself. Neville Hewitt finished with 10 tackles as well. And with this win, the Houston Texans are now 3-11. With this loss, the Jacksonville Jaguars are now 2-12 at this point in the season. Taking a look now at what is going on in the Mile High City in Denver, the Broncos hosted the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals would end up beating the Broncos 15-10. The Bengals outscored the Broncos 6-3 in the first half, and they outscored them 9-7 in the second half, with neither team scoring in the fourth quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the Denver Broncos were led by their starting quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. He threw for 98 yards and ran for 10. That's 108 yards. Their backup quarterback, Drew Lock, would throw for 88 yards and the team's only passing touchdown. Denver's leading rusher, Javonte Williams, had 15 carries for 72 yards on the ground. He had 9 receiving yards through the air. That's 81 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, Baron Browning would lead the Broncos in tackles as he had 10 tackles. Justin Simmons finished with 4 tackles as he had a sack and a half. On the winning end of this matchup, the Cincinnati Bengals were led by their starting quarterback, the number 1 overall pick from last year's draft, Joe Burrow. Burrow threw for 157 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 25 yards. He would finish with 182 total yards of offense for the day. Their leading receiver, Tyler Boyd, had 5 receptions for 96 yards as he had the team's lone offensive touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Jermaine Pratt had 15 tackles. He also had half of a sack. Larry Ogunjobi finished with 4 tackles as he had a sack and a half. With this win, the Cincinnati Bengals are 8-6. With this loss, the Denver Broncos are 7-7. Taking a look at what went down in San Francisco, the 49ers hosted the Atlanta Falcons. The Niners were able to beat the Falcons 31-13 after they outscored Atlanta 17-10 in the first half and 14-3 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Atlanta Falcons were led by their elite starting quarterback, Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan completed 19 of his 32 passes as he threw for 236 yards and a touchdown. Ryan ran for an additional 20 yards as he had 256 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver, Russell Gage, had 8 receptions for 91 yards and a touchdown. And then their rookie tight end, Kyle Pitts, finished with 4 receptions for 77 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Foyesade Olokun finished with 10 tackles on the day. And on the winning end of this matchup, the San Francisco 49ers were led by their starting quarterback, Jimmy G. Jimmy Garoppolo threw for 235 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 4 yards, giving him 239 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher, Jeff Wilson Jr., had 21 carries for 110 yards and a touchdown. He also had 9 receiving yards, so he had 119 total yards of offense. Their second leading rusher, Deebo Samuel, had 6 carries for 29 yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had 60 receiving yards, so he had 89 total yards of offense. San Francisco's leading receiver was their elite tight end, George Kittle. He finished with 6 receptions for 93 yards on the day. On the defensive side of the ball, Fred Warner was their leading tackler as he had 9 tackles on the day. With this win, the San Francisco 49ers are now 8-6. With this loss, the Atlanta Falcons are now 6-8 on their season. Taking a look now at what's going down in what's going on in Baltimore, the Ravens hosted the Green Bay Packers, and the Packers would end up beating the Ravens 31-30. The Packers won this matchup as the Ravens. They won this game basically on the last play of the game. Both the teams were tied at 14 at half. The Packers outscored the Ravens 17-16 in the fourth quarter. The Ravens did score a touchdown with a minute left, but they would go for the 2-point conversion, and the 2-point conversion would fail, which is, of course, why defense wins a lot of games, which is why it's important to not give up, especially on the last play, as the Packers picked up a very important win on the last play. On the losing end of this matchup, the Baltimore Ravens were led by Tyler Huntley. Huntley would throw for 215 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 73 yards and an additional 2 touchdowns. He would finish with 288 total yards of offense and 4 touchdowns. Their leading receiver was Mark Andrews. He had 10 receptions for 136 yards as he had both of the team's receiving touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Patrick Queen finished with 13 tackles. And on the winning end of this matchup, the Green Bay Packers were led by their goated starting quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. He would complete 23 of his 31 passes as he threw for 268 yards and 3 touchdowns. He ran for 11 yards as he had 279 total yards of offense. Their elite running back, Aaron Jones, had 13 yards on the ground for 13 carries for 58 yards. He also had 2 receptions for 12 yards and a touchdown. So he had 70 total yards and a receiving touchdown. The Packers' leading receiver, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, had 5 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown. Their elite wide receiver, Davante Adams, had 6 receptions for 44 yards as he had a touchdown as well. And on the defensive side of the ball, Devondre Campbell would lead the Packers in tackles. He had 10 of them, and he also had a sack, the team's lone sack. With this win, the Green Bay Packers are 11-3. With this loss, the Baltimore Ravens are now 8-6. And then, of course, taking a look at the final game that took place yesterday in Tampa Bay, the reigning Super Bowl champs Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosted the New Orleans Saints. The Saints would shut the Buccaneers out 9-0, being the first time Tom Brady has been shut out in a very long time as a starting quarterback. On the losing end of this matchup, the Buccaneers were led by their go-to starting quarterback, Tom Brady. He completed 26 of his 48 passes. He threw for 214 yards and an interception. He also ran for 2 yards, so that's 216 yards of offense. The Buccaneers' leading tackler on the other end was Levante David. He had 11 tackles as he had one of the team's 2 sacks. On the winning end of this matchup, the Saints were led by their starting quarterback, Taysom Hill. Hill threw for 154 yards and ran for 33. That's 187 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver was Marquez Callaway. He had 6 receptions for 112 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, CJ Gardner-Johnson and Demario Davis led the team in tackles. They each had 7 of them. Their elite defensive end, Cameron Jordan, would finish with 5 tackles as he had 2 of the team's 4 sacks. And CJ Gardner-Johnson, who also tied for the team high in tackles, would finish with the team's lone interception. With this win, the New Orleans Saints are now 7-7. With this loss, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now 10-4. Taking a look at what went down in the NBA, starting off in Detroit, the Pistons hosted the Miami Heat. The Pistons would beat the Heat 100-90. They won this matchup by 10 after they outscored the Heat by 14 in the third quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the Miami Heat were led by their shooting guard off the bench, Max Strus. Strus finished with 24 points in 34 minutes. He shot 7 for 16 from the field, 4 for 11 from 3, and 6 for 8 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard, Kyle Lowry out of Villanova, finished with 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 10 assists in 42 minutes. Lowry shot 3 for 12 from the field, 2 for 9 from 3, and he would go on to shoot 11 for 16 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Detroit Pistons were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Saddiq Bey. Bey finished with 26 points in 36 minutes. He shot 7 for 13 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and 9 for 10 from the foul line. With this win, the Detroit Pistons are now 5-26. With this loss, the Miami Heat are now 20-13. Jumping out to Memphis, the Grizzlies hosted the Portland Trailblazers. The Blazers would beat the Pistons 105-100. The Blazers won this matchup by 5 after they outscored the Grizzlies by 8 in the fourth quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the Memphis Grizzlies were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Dillon Brooks. Brooks finished with 37 points in 35 minutes. He shot 12 for 25 from the field, 4 for 10 from 3, and a perfect 9 for 9 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Blazers were led in scoring by their elite starting point guard, Damien Lillard. He finished with 32 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 turnovers in 38 minutes. He shot 9 for 19 from the field, 3 for 9 from 3, and 11 for 12 from the foul line. Their starting small forward, Norman Powell, finished with 28 points and 5 turnovers in 35 minutes. He shot 10 for 16 from the field, 5 for 8 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Portland Trailblazers are now 13-18, and with this loss, the Memphis Grizzlies are now 19-12. Taking a look at how the Kings fared, they hosted the San Antonio Spurs. The Kings were able to win this one 121-114. They won this matchup. They outscored the Spurs by 10 in the first quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the Spurs were led in scoring by their starting point guard, DeJounte Murray. Murray finished with 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists in 35 minutes. He shot 11 for 17 from the field and 3 for 4 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Sacramento Kings were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Buddy Hield. He finished with 29 points in 40 minutes. He shot 10 for 18 from the field, 7 for 9 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their starting point guard, Tyrese Halliburton, would finish with 27 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 steals in 37 minutes. He shot 12 for 19 from the field and 3 for 5 from 3. The Kings center off the bench, Damian Jones, would go on to finish with 23 points. He also finished with 8 rebounds and 2 blocks in 19 minutes. Jones shot 9 for 15 from the field. He also went on to shoot 2 for 2 from 3 and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the Sacramento Kings are now 13-18. With this loss, the San Antonio Spurs are now 11-18. Taking a look at what went down in Chicago, the Bulls hosted the Los Angeles Lakers. The Bulls would beat the Lakers 115-110. They won this matchup by 5 after they outscored the Lakers by 6 in the final quarter to overcome their deficit. On the losing end, the Lakers were led in scoring by their goated starting small forward, 4-time NBA Finals MVP LeBron James. He finished with 31 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 blocks in 39 minutes. The Kings shot 11 for 21 from the field, 1 for 7 from 3, and 8 for 11 from the foul line. Their power forward off the bench, Carmelo Anthony, finished with 21 points, 5 rebounds, 2 steals, and 2 blocks in 30 minutes. He shot 7 for 17 from the field, 5 for 12 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard, Russell Westbrook, finished with 20 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, and 2 blocks, as well as 6 turnovers in 38 minutes. He shot 9 for 19 from the field. On the losing end of this matchup, the Chicago Bulls were led in scoring by their starting small forward out of USC, DeMar DeRozan. He finished with 38 points and 6 assists in 34 minutes. He shot 11 for 24 from the field and 16 for 17 from the foul line. With this win, the Chicago Bulls are now 18-10. With this loss, the Los Angeles Lakers are now 16-15. Taking a look now at what's going on in Minneapolis, the Timberwolves hosted the Dallas Mavericks. The Wolves would end up beating the Mavericks 111-105. They won this matchup by 8. They won this matchup by 6 after they outscored the Mavericks by 8 in the final quarter to overcome their 2-point deficit. On the losing end of this matchup, the Dallas Mavericks were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Tim Hardaway Jr. out of Michigan. He finished with 28 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists, as well as 2 steals in 48 minutes. Hardaway shot 10 for 19 from the field, 4 for 13 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. Their starting power forward, Dorian Finney-Smith, finished with 23 points in 37 minutes. He shot 9 for 13 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Minnesota Timberwolves were led in scoring by their elite starting center, Karl Anthony Towns. Towns finished with 24 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists in 34 minutes. He shot 6 for 15 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, and 11 for for 13 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard, D'Angelo Russell, would finish with 22 points in 35 minutes. He shot 8 for 16 from the field, 4 for 7 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Minnesota Timberwolves are now 15-15. With this loss, the Dallas Mavericks are now 14-15. And then last but not least, taking a look at the last game that took place yesterday in the midst of all the postponed games, the Phoenix Suns hosted the Charlotte Hornets. The Suns beat the Hornets 137-106. They won this matchup by 31 after they outscored the Hornets by 22 in the first half, and then by 22 in the first quarter, and then by 9 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Charlotte Hornets were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Miles Bridges. He finished with 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 steals in 32 minutes. He shot 10 for 16 from the field. He would also go on to shoot a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. The Hornets' elite starting point guard out of Chino Hills, LaMelo Ball, would finish with 19 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals in 25 minutes. He shot 2 for 12 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Phoenix Suns were led in scoring by their center off the bench, JaVale McGee. He finished with 19 points and 7 rebounds in 16 minutes. He shot 9 for 10 from the field and 1 for 2 from the foul line. Their elite starting shooting guard, Devin Booker, finished with 16 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists in 26 minutes. He shot 6 for 15 from the field and 4 for 8 from 3. Their elite starting point guard, Chris Paul, finished with 14 points, 2 rebounds, and 9 assists in 24 minutes. He shot 6 for 9 from the field and 2 for 4 from 3. With this win, the Phoenix Suns are now 24-5. With this loss, the Charlotte Hornets are now 16-16. That is what the NBA is looking like following all of yesterday's matchups and taking a look at what went down with international soccer. Starting with the Premier League, Manchester City went to Newcastle and were able to beat Newcastle United 4-0. Their goals coming from Diaz, Cancelo, Mahrez, and their last goal coming from their elite English forward, Raheem Sterling. Chelsea ended up drawing 0-0 with Wolverhampton. Tottenham hosted Liverpool, and that game ended up as a 2-2 draw. First goal of this matchup was a goal in the 13th minute from Tottenham's elite English striker, Harry Kane. Liverpool would tie it up in the 35th minute with a goal from Diogo Jota. Liverpool would take the lead in the second half off of a goal from their elite Scottish defender, Andy Robertson, who eventually got a red card 8 minutes later, but right before he got a red card, Tottenham would tie it up in the 74th minute off of a goal from their elite Korean forward, Son Heung-min. Additionally, looking at what is going on yesterday from La Liga, Real Madrid ended up drawing 0-0 with Cadiz. In the Italian Serie A, AC Milan hosted Napoli, and Napoli scored the lone goal of that game in the 5th minute. And taking a look at what's going on outside of that, in the French Coupe de France, PSG was able to beat Spain 3-0, as 2 of their goals came from their elite French forward, Kylian Mbappe, who actually turns 23 today. So happy birthday to him. He wasn't able, but he will, that's quite a day for him, as PSG will advance past the round of 64 to the round of 32 in this tournament. With that said, that's everything that I have for you from yesterday's exhibitions. I want to thank you all for sticking with me as we navigate through the world of sports one day at a time. Once all of today's exhibitions are done, I'm going to come back tomorrow on Tuesday, December 21st for another episode of The Elite. But that's, of course, once everything is done today. But with that said, I want to thank everyone once again for listening. I really hope all is well. I do want to thank the ESPN, FIFA, NCAA, NFL, and NBA websites for giving me all the facts and figures that I need. I wouldn't be able to do it without them. And like I said, I want to thank everyone for listening to this piece. I actually have an elite individual profile for Kylian Mbappe after this. And thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more after this. Peace out.